Iroh was worried. There was a dim light ahead on the path leading up to the shrine. His ostrich horse, Haystack, grew restless the higher they climbed. Something was out of place. Iroh hurried his mount to go faster, but the animal refused to cooperate, so he decided to go the rest of the way on foot. Iroh was soon out of breath, but his determination kept him going. Should do more exercise, he made a mental note. Iroh could hear movement up ahead. To be on the safe side, he left the path for a moment to hide in the shadows of a crooked small tree. Coming down the path was a group of maybe 20 or so Earth Kingdom soldiers riding on ostrich horses. They seemed to be in a hurry to be elsewhere, none of them stopping to look around. They didn't notice Iroh behind the tree. They probably wouldn't have noticed me even if I'd been standing in the middle of the road. Might have just run me over. Such is their distress. The last of the soldiers came a good 100 meters behind the rest. His ostrich horse was giving him a hard time. Iroh was in a hurry, but it would be wise to gather intelligence on whatever it was he was about to walk into. No point hurrying to someone's rescue if that meant you yourself would end up needing saving as well. Iroh lifted a fallen tree branch from the ground and waited. The rest of the troops were out of sight, but quite possibly not out of hearing range. But something told Iroh that the odds of the troops turning back to come to their fellow soldiers' aid were on Uncle's side. Iroh jumped from the shadows and knocked the man down from the ostrich horse with the branch. The man, a boy really, made a terrified squeak. His ostrich horse kept running. The boy Iroh had knocked down didn't even attempt to get up and fight him. He stayed on the ground, covering his face with his hands, mumbling something that sounded like, "Don't eat my soul." Iroh decided to try and comfort the man to get sensible answers out of him. "Don't worry, son, I'm not going to hurt you. Everything is all right," he said in his most calm and friendly tone. It was pretty calm and friendly indeed. Slowly, the soldier caught on to Iroh's tone and lowered his hands. "I'm Iroh," Uncle said and smiled at the man. "What's your name?" Quan. "It's nice to meet you, Quan. I'm sorry that I knocked you down from your ostrich horse, but I need to exchange a few words with you. You see, I'm looking for my nephew, who I believe is in trouble, and I was wondering if you had seen him. He might be about your height, wearing dark clothing." Looking at the boy's terrified eyes, Uncle wasn't sure the poor soldier understood him. Eventually the man did manage to stammer out, You... Suddenly he grabbed Iroh's hand and said, "No, you can't go there. There's a monster there. You go there and he'll eat you." "It's all right. No one's going to eat you now." Iroh continued to calm the nerve-wracked soldier. "Could you tell me what type of monster you're referring to?" "A dragon," the man stammered, his voice shaky. Oh no, Uncle thought to himself. It sounded like trouble had already found his nephew. Uncle finally arrived at the shrine. He saw Zuko sitting in the middle of it, baffled but in one piece. Iroh mentally praised the great spirits he could think of for having watched over his nephew. Nephew, are you all right?" Uncle asked while kneeling next to the young man to get a better look at him. When Uncle had laid his hand on the boy's shoulder, Zuko startled. He looked surprised to see Uncle there. "I'm fine. What are you doing here?" Zuko eventually replied. Uncle hugged his nephew. "I really am fine, Uncle," Zuko said, undoubtedly embarrassed. "I can see you are," Uncle replied, letting go of Zuko so he could better see his nephew's face. "What happened?" "I met a spirit. A dragon spirit." Seeing his uncle's worried face, Zuko quickly added, "But it's okay. It didn't hurt me. I summoned it to help me and it was grateful, and it saved me from the soldiers and showed me where to find my mother." Uncle tried to quickly put all that together with what he already knew from the situation. "Wait a second, you were under attack even before the spirit manifested?" Zuko rubbed the back of his neck but didn't meet his gaze. "I'm sure I could have handled it. There weren't that many of them. Zuko, I counted 20 soldiers leaving this place." Zuko grimaced for a moment, but then his face settled for a more serious expression and just nodded. "But it's all right now, and didn't you hear what I said? I know where to look for my mother next." Uncle took in a deep breath to calm himself. He knew he was being unnecessarily hard on his nephew. There was no way Zuko could have anticipated being in so much trouble, and therefore it wasn't his nephew's fault that he'd been ambushed by Earth Kingdom army and a dragon spirit. It was Iroh who should have anticipated the possible dangers. He He was older and more experienced in spiritual matters. He was responsible for Zuko. The spirit helped you? Aang asked, trying not to sound accusing. She said we were kin. She said she wanted to help me and our minds were connected, so I think she was telling the truth. Uncle nodded again. He was still far from comfortable with the idea of Zuko having met a dragon spirit. First things first, though. They needed to get back to the ship before anything else could find his nephew. Fortunately, Zuko had tied his ostrich horse well, and it was still waiting for them some distance from the shrine. They began their journey downhill and toward the shore. 36 hours later. Sokka was not having a good day, but he tried not to complain too loudly. He was well aware that none of them had had it easy the past few days. Since, though, he was the one who had got kidnapped by a spirit, Sokka was pretty sure he had had it the worst. It wasn't even counting in all the other crazy and dangerous things they had done today, like running into a Fire Nation blockade while the firebenders bombarded them with burning rocks, and all this trouble because Aang had to talk to a dead firebender, which wasn't creepy at all. Now they're in the Fire Nation. And in that sense, Sokka supposed it was only fair they were hiding in a secret lava tunnel from a bunch of scary fire sages. Sokka had never been to the Fire Nation before, but this was pretty much what he expected it to be like. The one thing that could have completed the experience was if Prince Zuko had jumped from behind a pillar and taken another shot at capturing Aang. Speaking of the devil, now wasn't a bad time to make some inquiries. So, Fire Sage guy, Sokka began. You can call me Shu. Surprisingly helpful, Fire Sage guy said. Right, so you're a pretty well-informed man on Fire Nation stuff, right? Well, yes I am. Since I live on the remote island, I may not have the latest news. Nor do I have any military secrets. But if there's something you would like to know about Fire Nation history or culture in general, I'd be honored to advise the Avatar and his companions. The Fire Sage guy smiled at Sokka encouragingly, and then continued to mind his steps as they walked up a steep tunnel. So, do firebenders know how to read minds? The question stopped them all in their tracks. Katara and Aang also turned to look expectantly at Shu. My initial answer would be no, but... Shu began, lost in thought. But what? Katara hurried the man. I'm a firebender, and I know many firebenders. I have never met or heard of a bender who could do anything like that. Still... the man added hesitantly. There is an old legend, a myth really, that goes more or less as dragons could see into the hearts of man, so were the children of the fire blessed with the gift to see into another man's heart. A literal interpretation of what could be that it is possible for a firebender to have ability to see into people's memories, or know their intentions. But it's an old tale, and probably just a metaphor. There's other weird stuff mentioned in the same tale, so it's most likely just nonsense. Shu concluded. If he was expecting to see relieved smiles on children's faces, he was wrong. Wait a second, Aang said. Did you say dragons could see into people's memories? Can they also show you memories? Because just the other day I met Roku's spirit dragon, and he showed me images of things. I figured it was a spirit thing because I did something similar with Heibai, but I guess it could be a fire-bending thing. You met Fang, Roku's dragon companion? Oh my. Shu seemed to be almost disturbed by the thought of a dead dragon showing up, as Sokka had been when Aang had told him and Katara about his trip to the spirit world. Aang, I think you might be onto something, Sokka said thoughtfully, and continued to Shu. What would you say if we told you that we've learned from a sort of reliable source that firebenders can read minds? Katara elbowed Sokka the words, sort of. Shu looked baffled by Sokka's words, and by the elbowing. If it's a secret, you don't have to tell me your source, I understand. Oh no, it's not that, Katara amended quickly. I was just letting my brother know how much I feel about him being a condescending idiot. Shu still looked confused, so Katara continued. I mean, it's not a secret we think Zuko can read minds. The Fire Sage's face dropped. Zuko? You don't by any chance mean the banished Prince Zuko? The kids looked at one another, but before Sokka answered, Yeah, probably the same guy. You've met him. Well, no, I've seen him from a distance once, but he was just a child then. The Fire Sages have dealings with the royal family on a regular basis, but the prince was banished at such a young age I never really got the chance to. We should really keep walking while we talk, Aang cut in, surprising Sokka greatly. It wasn't like the carefree airbender to worry about things like making it to a meeting on time. That was usually Sokka or Katara's job. Of course, Shu agreed, and gestured toward another side tunnel. This way. I have to ask, Shu went on, do you really believe the gift of mind reading is possible, and that Prince Zuko, Fire Lord Ozai's firstborn, can do it? Well, we're not sure, Sokka began, but Katara cut in. Yes, we are. He used his gift on me when we first met, and he admitted as much the second time we ran into him. You've met the young prince more than once? Shu asked, brows furrowed. Then he facepalmed himself and continued. How silly of me. I'm sure you would have. The terms of his banishment dictate he can only redeem himself by capturing the Avatar. Though you should be quite safe from him here, since he's not allowed to return to the Fire Nation under any circumstances. Not before he has captured you. Really? Sokka asked. Well, that would explain why he followed us all the way from the South Pole. But now that we are at his home turf, he's nowhere to be seen. This is revolutionary, Shu suddenly exclaimed. If what you say is true, it will change the way we understand our history and our element. That's all well and nice, but what can we do to defend ourselves from mind reading? Katara asked, frustrated. I wouldn't know. It seemed Shu had not thought that far ahead. But you said something on the subject, Sokka encouraged. You mean the tale of Shan Li? Yeah, what else does it say? Shu considered for a moment before answering. I never had taken those writings very seriously, but in this context, the tale is about 4 men, one of whom is a firebender, an earthbender, a waterbender, and an airbender. Each of the benders has a different talent, and in turn they try to explain their talent to the other. They compete in whose element allows them to do the most with it. The teaching of the story is that no element is greater than the other. Because it is at odds with the Fire Nation's current writing of history, the story is no longer widely taught. What does it say about these special powers each element has? If the other powers are real, maybe we could use them to counteract the mind reading, Sokka speculated. The story is written as a poem, so it isn't very precise. It basically says that the firebender has the talent to understand people's pasts. The earthbender can see things clearer than the others. The waterbender has the gift to mend the wounded, naturally. And the airbender is a master of deception. When you say the waterbender can naturally mend the wounded, what do you mean? Katara asked. It's no secret that some waterbenders have the power to heal the injured, Shu explained. They can? Katara explained in awe. Did you hear that, Aang? When we get to the Northern Water Tribe, maybe they'll teach us how to do that, too. She was exuberant, and Sokka couldn't blame her. Healing did sound like really useful talent. Probably more useful than mind reading, but not nearly as creepy. Still, they didn't have time to waste on Katara dreaming of the future. Sokka tried to steer the conversation back on topic. What about the other talents? Have you heard that there are real-life equivalents to them? Not in mind-bending, and there aren't many unbiased writings left on the airbenders. I have heard some wild stories about earthbenders having a sixth sense of sorts. One hears they know where their elements are without even looking, and can always find the people they're tracking, and never lose their sense of direction. I'm not sure if that counts as a superpower, but who knows? Maybe there's more to it. Why are airbenders master deception? Aang asked, frowning. We are a kind people, we don't mean to deceive anyone. In the tale, the airbender is described to vanish before the other's eyes, Shu contemplated. Presuming Earth is about seeing clearly, maybe it's the opposite element would have the opposite effect, of blurring one's vision. That was all the speculation they had time to do before they arrived at the end of the long stairway that led to the hall and a wide double door with 5 dragons' heads carved into it. The door was locked. Zuko was standing at the deck of his ship. He should have been happy. The dragon spirit had as good as confirmed his mother was alive. She would be in a small Earth Kingdom village, not far from the port where they had soon dock. She's alive. That was good news. So why did Zuko feel so anxious? If she was alright, why hasn't she tried to contact me? It was silly and unfair of Zuko to ask such things. His mother loved him with all her heart, and she would have been there for Zuko if she could have. There was undoubtedly a very good reason why she hadn't tried to get in touch with him. Most likely she couldn't. Maybe because she was in trouble or held captive. When Zuko had been a child, he had sometimes fantasized that his mother was alive, that he would go on a crazy quest to rescue her from bad people of varying sorts. Now the possibility of having to fight bad people seemed to become very real. Then again, maybe Ursa was alright and free, but unable to contact Zuko because she didn't know he too was in the Earth Kingdom. No matter what the reason, Zuko would find his mother soon, and then all his questions would be answered. Someone was approaching Zuko from behind. By the way the man walked, Zuko guessed it was Lieutenant G. After spending 3 years on a small ship with the same 20 or so people, it didn't need to be a master ninja to recognize people by their footsteps. "Sir?" Lieutenant G addressed Zuko. "We arrive at the port of Han in 10 minutes. Zuko nodded. The lieutenant turned to leave, but Zuko addressed him. "Lieutenant G, my uncle and I will go ashore to continue the search. Tell the men to prepare the ostrich horses we bought." "Very well," G answered, and added to make sure he understood. "Going to search for the Avatar, sir?" "Yes," Zuko lied. "We'll be gone at least 2 days, so you can hand out shore leave to the crew according to your judgment." It seemed only fair, since Zuko himself was going out on a personal mission. It was unnecessary for the crew to know who they were looking for this time, so on the record, they were still looking for the Avatar. Lieutenant G was again about to leave when Zuko added, "And Lieutenant, there is something I'd like you to tell the crew." Zuko took a deep breath. He didn't have to say this, but somehow felt like getting some closure with his crew before going on his next journey. It was time to let them off the hook. Maybe Zuko should even apologize for his own behavior over the past couple of weeks. "Please tell them that I'm pleased with their recent performances, and wish them to keep working admirably." "Pleased?" Lieutenant G asked incredulously. "Yes, very pleased," Zuko confirmed, wondering if the real message was getting through. "Dismissed." Lieutenant G bowed and left, looking stunned. Zuko felt a bit guilty for not giving positive feedback more often. Surely they know I appreciate their contribution to my quest, don't they? Zhao was pleased with himself. He had just captured the Avatar's Water Tribe allies and a Fire Nation trader, and it was literally a matter of minutes before he had his hands on the Air Nomad as well. The only thing that could have completed the experience was if the banished prince had been foolish enough to show up here as well. Zhao could arrest him too, and finally get even with what happened at Tai Tai Village. Not that I'm going to let him get away with that, one way or another. I don't yet have any proof he broke any laws, but I'll be sure to find something to hang over his head. The Avatar was taking his time. Zhao left his gaze wander over the men in the room. I'm sure I'll notice it when the 4 times the size of a man door is moved as much as an inch. Zhao turned to address the leader of the Fire Sages. "Have you ever heard of an instance where a bender was able to gather information unusually effectively?" Since the sage looked baffled, Zhao decided he had to specify. Using his bending, that is. "Do you mean threatening?" the head sage offered. "No, I mean, is it possible for a firebender to extend their abilities into another person's mind?" The sage still looked clueless, but from the corner of his eye, Zhao noticed the Water Tribe barbarians and the traitor sage exchanging meaningful looks. "Aha! You," Zhao pointed to the sage chained to a pillar. "Tell me what you know." "Me, I'm just the sage began. "I have no patience for your lies. You know something, and if you don't tell me everything right now, I will make sure you rot the rest of your life in a windowless cell." The man hesitated, but finally spoke. "I have never seen a firebender do such a thing, but there is a legend that goes." Zhao listened to the other man's story intently. Even at the risk of being made a fool, he had learned long ago that most stories that sounded like fairy tales were quite true. He had learned that in the library of all places. When the sage had finished his low tale, Zhao frowned. "This could be a lead, but it wasn't the criminalizing evidence I'm after." "Fascinating," Zhao said in a sarcastic tone. "But I'm not interested in bedtime stories. If I were, I would have asked a nurse, not a sage. I want to know what is the punishment for using such interrogation techniques?" Truth be told, Zhao had no idea whether reading minds was illegal, but it sure as hell ought to be. The head sage spoke up. "Even if such a thing was possible, which it isn't, It might not be illegal or punishable. The difficult part about punishing such a crime would be proving it took place. Such are our ways in the Fire Nation. Zhao smiled coldly at the older man. He had some nerve to lecture Zhao when he and his sages had only moments ago allowed a 12-year-old to outwit them. The commander was about to let the fire sage hear it. But the gigantic doors began to slide open. Finally, Zhao turned away for his prey to show himself. As Aang, Katara, Sokka, and Momo were flying off into the sunset in Appa's saddle, Aang told his friends about the comet, and how he would have to learn all 4 elements before it arrived. Guys, do you think if Zuko knows how to read minds, so does the Fire Lord? Sokka looked thoughtful. We can't really rule that out. If mind reading exists but is really rare, it would make sense the most powerful firebenders can do it, and the Fire Lord would definitely be on that list. Why do you ask? Aang gulped. Because I have to defeat the Fire Lord before the end of summer. It would be nice to know what I'm up against. Katara hugged Aang and promised to start teaching him waterbending right away. If Zuko had been traveling alone, he would have ridden through the night. As it was, they made camp. Zuko didn't want to dawdle, but Uncle was right. It would have been a bad idea to ride through the night, make them both tired and exhausted when they arrived at the village. Since there was a real risk they were heading to a fight, that would be a dumb move. No one in the village would have been up in the dead of night anyway. Zuko had barely slept at all, but when he had, his dreams had been filled with evil people hurting his mother. They all ended the same, with everything on fire. Zuko was more than happy to get back on the ostrich horse. He expected getting Uncle to get up before dawn would have been a challenge, but to his surprise, the old man had made no complaints. They were riding on the same ostrich horses they rented and eventually bought from village Akeem. According to Uncle, they had overpaid for the new mounts, but Zuko hadn't been in the mood to haggle. They may not be worth the money that we paid for them, but they are here and good enough for our needs. Not a lot of places will be willing to sell an ostrich horse to suspicious, most likely Fire Nation travelers anyway. Zuko suspected Iroh had agreed to the deal because he thought Zuko wanted to keep his mount because they were going to attach to it. It wasn't really the case. Precious was unpredictable and moody, and however Zuko had been impressed by the way she stuck around even through an ambush and a spirit attack, she was either very stupid or very loyal, and although Zuko hoped for the latter, he would work with either. They passed a crooked wooden structure that served as a city gate and dismounted their horses. Zuko had chosen to cover his head and hair with a scarf, but his scar was still drawing curious glances from people passing by. The village was located some distance from the coast, but the nearby mountains ensured the area got a fair amount of rain each year. The terrain was made up of green and grassy valleys separated by rocky slopes. Some more sheltered patches even had trees growing in them, despite the high altitude. Like in most of the Earth Kingdom, the main source of income looked to be agriculture, though herding appeared to be popular as well. This place is nothing like I pictured it. Uncle pulled Zuko out of his uncomfortable thoughts and back into the here and now. It seems a piece of Haystack's rein had fallen off and gone missing. Zuko looked at Haystack's reins, compared to the one on his own horse, and realized Uncle was right. The reins on Uncle's ostrich horse was falling apart, and a small metallic piece had already gone missing. Uncle gave Zuko a look that was probably meant to remind him not to buy second-rate products in the future. There's a blacksmith shop right there, Zuko pointed out angrily. He was not in the mood for "I told you so's." When Zuko and Uncle entered the shop, a small clay bell above the door informed the shopkeeper they were customers. "I'll be right over," a friendly female voice called from the back of the shop. Zuko froze. "Mother?"